Okay. All right, so we are rolling here. So I think you guys are all based in New York, so good afternoon, everybody. So my name's Brian. I'm the data services lead here at PolicyMap. So one of the things that I do is onboard some of the new premium subscribers, especially those that might be interested in doing something a little bit, like incorporating some of their own data eventually into the subscription or into the platform. Um, so I'll be the lead for the training and also just kind of be like, the primary point of contact for the subscription to PolicyMap for Community Preservation Corporation. So before I kind of like jump in, I always just sort of like to get a sense of like, I pose this question to Sabrina, but she wasn't able to share anything in advance, but just kind of like how you guys are interested in using PolicyMap. If anybody has just sort of like any thoughts on that front. And so it's just helpful sometimes for framing the training itself, but also just, for our own knowledge as far as like how we know, our customers are using the tool. So if anybody has any thoughts on that before I jump in, I'd be interested.
I'm completely unfamiliar with the software, so if you could just provide a general overview of like what it offers and its features, that'd be helpful to me just to understand like what I could potentially do with it. I'm kind of coming into this blind.
Okay, that's helpful.
And I can share, I'm on the policy team at CPC, so we need it specifically for creating maps to show elected officials, essentially where CPC developments are, which is the data I've already uploaded into the system.
Gotcha.
One thing we were looking into is we have a new program that we need to see residential home sales, and we don't typically see that a lot. So a lot of the programs that we had were just for rental averages and things like that, and where rents are. But now we needed to look a little bit further and see where 1 to 4s were selling on the market. I think that's what somebody brought this program up and said that this may be a good option for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm just looking at a variety of ways we can use to create visualizations of our loans and properties that we service for a wide range of possible reporting around impact and also around business production and such. So
Okay.
no one specific goal in mind.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's all definitely really helpful. And I think some of this we'll definitely touch on today for sure. So we're recording. So just to kind of, I'll share my screen so that you guys we'll all be seeing the PolicyMap landing page in just a second. Since we do have like a bit of a range in terms of like familiarity with PolicyMap and things like that, I'll just provide sort of the quick background on who we are, and then we can jump into the actual walkthrough, and we'll cover kind of all of the basic functionality, talk about the different data available in the tool, and then also start to get into some more advanced features. And so I think we'll be able to cover quite a bit, and everybody should be able to get a little bit of something. So so the quick background on PolicyMap is that we're a nationwide online mapping and data platform. So we basically we have 40,000 indicators. We basically combine a number of public data sources, so things like coming from the census, HUD, health data from the CDC, along with some proprietary data that we license on, some examples being like school performance data, some residential and business vacancy data. And we kind of combine those into an easy to use mapping and reporting tool to kind of provide like a mapping solution to people who would benefit from that kind of visualization, but are not necessarily like GIS, geographic information systems specialists, and kind of have like that kind of training. So you'll see the tool covers data from demographics, income, housing, health, jobs, health, education, other topic areas. The tool was used for research, business planning, site selection, grant applications, and impact analysis, and overall just kind of data visualization. Some of our subscribers include federal, state, local government agencies. Lots of universities use PolicyMap for coursework as well as research. Lots of nonprofit organizations, a number of CDFIs, as well as lots of interest recently from kind of like public health sector. So we actually started in 2008 as part of the reinvestment fund, the CDFI based in Philadelphia, as like an internal tool for them to be able to understand neighborhoods where they were making loans, and then to also like eventually start to use some of the secondary data available through the tool to like start to talk about the impact of their work. So that's a little bit of the background. So the just to kind of quickly touch on the subscription for Community Preservation Corporation, you have a premium subscription. So it pretty much just means that you have access to all the functionality through the tool, all the data. There's no kind of like limitations in terms of the data you can access through the tool. And then there is a bit of what we call custom data loading. So that's like if you had your loan data and you wanted to like upload it into the platform, that's something where I would actually work with you guys on kind of like obtaining that data, loading it into the tool, setting up filters and things like that. So so that's a little bit about the subscription. So I'll jump into the training itself and get into the walkthrough here. So PolicyMap's a web-based tool, so you can access it from any computer with internet access, and you would just go to policymap.com. That's the URL, and this is the landing page that you would see. So right now I'm already logged in, but if I wasn't, you would just see a login button here. Put in your username, your password. Username is just your email address, and then your password. Usually you get a temporary password to set up. Or to kind of log in the first time, and then you change that after the first time you log in. There's also that forgot password link too, just to get like an email. So once you log into PolicyMap, this is kind of the default screen. This is just a notification about sort of our transition to our new platform. Quick note on that is just that we are in the process of transitioning to like a new version of the tool, but for the most part, everything I'm going to be showing today is going to be in the new version. We've pretty much already officially flipped the switch, but there's certain functionality that's still just sort of in what we call the legacy platform. You can toggle to the legacy platform using this link up here at the top of the browser page to kind of go back and forth, and there's a corresponding link on the legacy tool to come back here to the new version. So yeah, so we'll start with basic functionality, data that's available, and then get into some of the more advanced features. If anybody does have questions, I definitely always try to leave like the last 5-10 minutes for questions if you wanted to wait until then. But if anybody has anything kind of like just sort of they want to raise during the training, that's also fine. We don't have like a huge group. So in terms of support resources, up in the top right-hand corner, you can get a link to our support page. And so if you click on this, we have this support page, has lots of just like tutorials and guides on, making maps, using different features and functionality of the tool, so you can kind of navigate through it that way. There's also, if I go back to kind of the main screen here, this is also searchable. So if you're like you're working with a custom region and you want to, see how to use the drawing custom region tool, then you can use like keyword searches, click on one of these to like actually go to that entry to see how that functionality works. And then we do have some like a video gallery in here, which is sort of like some quick videos, 2 or 3 minute videos on how to use different features. And we also have this what's new section, which basically just kind of shows, if I click on the what's new, it's kind of like a rolling sort of feed of data that is updated, data that's added to the platform. So lots of times we get that question, how we sort of let people know when data sources are updated or new ones are added. And so this is kind of the go-to place to see some of that. And then we have a contact button up here. So for just sort of general technical questions, that's also an option. We just have a couple of folks on our team that monitor that. Sorry, you guys might be seeing yourselves. I thought I saw something about somebody trying to join. So in terms of just sort of basic site navigation, you can just kind of click and drag, use the scroll wheel on your mouse to like zoom in and out on the map. So, you know, just like if you use Google Maps or any other like web-based map, that kind of like should feel fairly familiar. And that will kind of, as you start to zoom in closer, you'll start to see like additional details populate, more like places show up on the base map and things like that. One of the core pieces of functionality in the tool is this location search or set location bar, where you can put in like an actual address or a city, a county, state, zip code to actually zoom to an area on the map. And so as you start to like type into this, you'll start to see some starts to like autofill with some different options. So if I wanted to go to navigate to Kings County, New York, I could start typing that in, select that option, and it'll zoom into, you know, show me kind of the boundary of Kings County, New York, and more of that base map will start to populate. So you can zoom in really, really close on the map, you know, down to, you know, almost like the block level, street level, and you'll really start to see like a lot of the details start to fill in as you zoom in, especially in some of like the urban centers, start to see like building footprints and things like that. So it does allow you to get really, really close, especially, you know, as we, you know, might incorporate like the loan data into the tool, or if you're uploading your own sort of address data, can be, you know, beneficial in terms of some of the visuals. So you can also, especially in, you know, cities, if you're looking to kind of create some different looking visuals, there is this 3D button in the bottom right hand corner where you can like adjust your angle to see some, you know, kind of like 3D visuals of your cities. You'll like see some of the, you know, buildings start to jump out at you and everything like that. So again, just in terms of like creating nice looking visuals, kind of overhead looking bird's eye view maps, that's another thing you can use. So that's that 3D button in the bottom right hand corner. And if you just wanted to go back up to the overhead view, you can just reset. So just like a couple more things on the base map itself. There are other base map options. So this gear icon in the bottom right hand corner is where you can change from the standard one to more of like a grayscale or satellite image terrain base map. And then within each of them, there's these different, you know, features that you can toggle on and off. So if you like didn't want the building footprints, you could uncheck that box to remove those. You know, maybe you don't want the roads, it's too road heavy, something like that. So there's lots of different customizations you can do on the base maps themselves to change, you know, what the visual display of your map looks like. So all of the data that's available through the PolicyMap data library is all organized in these data menus from the demographics over to analytics. So this is kind of like all the data that's just like available out of the box that we're, you know, constantly like updating, maintaining, and like adding to as well. And so as you open up, you know, these menu items like demographics, you'll see there's these different topics. You can go through and say like, I'm interested in an indicator related to population with disabilities. Then you can see like more specific indicators that branch out from that. And these all just kind of cascade out into kind of more specific things. And once you select something, so I go through like race, ethnicity, and looking at race and Black or African American, non-Hispanic. So kind of like that's like a good example of like it really cascades out into more and more specific things. Once you select it, it'll load that data on the map. And right now we're basically just seeing, you know, percent of non-Hispanic Black population shaded as a data layer. And I'll kind of talk more about data layers in a second. So the different menus, you know, they're grouped by theme rather than by source to help make it kind of easy to, you know, find what you're looking for. So demographic will have a lot of data from the census. We actually like just today added 2020 census data. It's for a limited number of indicators. They haven't released like kind of all of the indicators, but like population and race, ethnicity, and things like that, and some housing or household type indicators are available from the 2020 census. So the demographics menu will have lots of that type of data. Incomes and spending is where you can find like median household income, different poverty indicators. There's also some data on like some consumer spending habits and things like that. The housing menu is going to have some point level data. So, like that non-Hispanic Black population is a data layer, shades areas based off of like the concentration of, that indicator, that variable. We also have lots of data sets in PolicyMap that are points. So they're actual like point locations of HUD, contract multifamily properties, or low-income housing tax credit properties. So there's a couple of examples of that. We do have some home sale data in PolicyMap. It's county level data. It's a data set that we do license from Moody's Analytics. That's our source for the home sale data. So there's annual and quarterly, number of sales, median sale price, and then we do have just sort of like a housing price index indicator from Federal Housing Finance Agency, and that's one that actually does have a little bit more granularity to it in terms of boundaries. I think it goes down to census tract level. Other data in here is going to be like vacancy data on residential and business vacancy. That's another one that we license. There's just sort of things on like median rents, number of rental units, homeowners and renters, and then like housing affordability data, what percentage of renters are cost burdened, homeowners are cost burdened. The lending menu has data on some mortgage originations, different types of mortgage originations. There's also some interesting ones on like mortgage denials, which is definitely an interesting topic. We also have like bank branch locations, CDFI locations, credit union branches. And then I'll kind of maybe skip through some of these ones a little bit quicker, but quality of life is going to have, some data on like transportation mode share, food access. The economy menu has lots of jobs data, unemployment from BLS, data on different workforce characteristics. Education menu will have school locations, and then has like school district level data on, graduation rates, student teacher ratios, educational attainment indicators. The health menu has some COVID data, which is kind of county level data, but on like vaccinations, cases. There's health facility locations, hospitals, and then lots of data from like the CDC and other federal, kind of like health agencies on different underlying, health conditions, risk factors, and things like that. And then the federal guidelines menu is going to have lots of like place-based kind of designations. So like CDFI investment areas, CRA eligibility, and those kinds of, designations. So that's kind of the overview, all the data that's in there. You do also, there is a data search function. So, if you like wanted to look for number of renters or something like that, and just typed in like a keyword like renters into this data search bar, you can, see the results, click one of these, and it'll just kind of load it directly on the map rather than going through like the data menus. So there's also that functionality too. So I'll load an example of a data layer, go through just kind of like interacting with that data, kind of, some of the different things you can do. So I'm going to go through and put on a poverty indicator. So just families in poverty. And we can zoom out a little bit. So anytime you have a data layer on the map, you'll see over here on the legend, just like a short, title for the data that you're looking at. This is % of all families that live in poverty between 2015 and 2019. If you click on the eye bubble, that will show you some more kind of a longer description in some cases for the variable. And then you'll see the source where the data comes from. In this case, it's coming from the census. if you wanted to see like more information on the actual source for that indicator, then you can click on that link from the legend, and that will kind of redirect you to our data directory, which has kind of all the documentation for all of our data sources, tells you, what years are available from the source, what geographic kind of boundaries are available within the tool the last time it was updated in PolicyMap, and then just like descriptions on how we work with that data. So when you have a data layer on the map, like this, families in poverty, and you kind of are moving your mouse around and not clicking on anything, you'll see there's a hover, which just tells you, based off of, like, in this case, the census tract I'm hovering over, what's the estimated percent of families that are living in poverty. So like the darker purple areas, obviously, where there's those higher poverty rates, lighter purple being lower poverty rates. And there's also some interactivity over here between these ranges over here in the legend and what you're seeing on the map. So if I'm like in a darker purple area, that highest range is going to have like a little light gray shading to show you sort of which of those 5 buckets, essentially, kind of the area you're hovering over, falls within. And then if you wanted to like just see those that are in the top range, or the top 2 ranges, you can actually click on these over here in the legend to basically just see like those census tracts that are poverty rates greater than 18%, or the top 2 or 3, and it'll just kind of like hide everything else. And you can remove those by clicking on the X's next to those selections. So then if you actually click on an area, so let's say like I'm interested in a census tract, it has one of these higher poverty rates, and I click on an area, one of these particular census tracts. This little information bubble will show you like a quick preview of like change over time for that variable. You can interact with this, kind of see how this value has changed for the different sort of time frames that are available for that indicator for that place. And then you can see a little bit more detail by clicking on this trends button. Opens up this sidebar over here, which will tell you, kind of shows you like how that census tract or how that area compares to kind of some benchmark areas or hierarchies. And so, it shows you like that value for the census tract. How does that compare to, Kings County, City of New York, the metro area, all the way up to the nation. So you can kind of do like those quick comparisons. And then you could also toggle to see neighboring census tracts or neighboring boundaries by using that that other selection there. And then it will basically kind of show you, how does this tract compare to like the other ones kind of like adjacent to it. And with either of these, the trend charts over here showing change over time for the different areas are something that you can interact with. And then you can also expand this out into kind of like a fuller trend chart modal by clicking on this button that says see chart with listed locations. And I'm using the neighbors right now, but you can do this with those hierarchical boundaries too. So this will open up this trend chart, and here, the default is just going to show you like your selected tract or selected boundary, but you can add some of those other ones by checking these boxes over here. On the right-hand side, it'll add those, to your trend chart. You can interact with this, export this as like an image, and then you can also, there's like some different options in here if you wanted to remove some of these, labels or add labels for, the actual data points. Some of those kinds of things you can do before you export it. So just a couple of other legend options, or just kind of layer things to be aware of. So over in the legend for this data layer, you can use some of these different drop downs, change some of the different options as far as kind of what the visual is going to look like. So if I select this drop down for the year, I could keep this same indicator on the map, but look at like a prior time frame to look at, basically like poverty rates in 2000, and it will, show that same indicator, but now looking at, 2000 data rather than the latest time frame. You can also change your variable, from the variable drop down, you can, instead of looking at, percent of families in poverty, you could look at like an estimated count by choosing number. It just kind of changes what you're looking at. And then you can also do color customization, and you can also do some changes with the actual ranges themselves, with kind of how like the data is shaded. So if you click this ranges drop down, you can change your number of ranges, or you can actually kind of change like the cut point. So like maybe you want the top range to be just where it's greater than 25%, and so you can kind of drag these, or actually just kind of like put the number in, but it will, just as you drag them around, it will change the actual shading on the map, so that basically kind of just like those areas with greater than 25% poverty are now the darkest ones. And then this shaded by dropdown is going to show you, based off of like what you're currently looking at, how the data in that particular layer is shaded on the map. So it's showing us census tract level data right now, and that's largely dependent on your zoom level. So if I'm zoomed with the same data layer, if I'm zoomed like a lot further out, eventually it'll change to like a zip code area, and then like a county, as I get out to more of like a regional view. And so a lot of that's sort of driven by your zoom level on the map, but you do have the ability to, lock to a particular boundary type, and kind of keep it shaded at that boundary type regardless of your zoom level. So if I wanted to keep it at census tract level, even at further out zooms, then you can click on this little boundary lock icon to do that. Or you could, even regardless of zoom, just kind of manually change to look at congressional districts or zip code areas, and you can kind of do this more manually too. So I'll load a point data set next. So looking at and keep our families in poverty data on the map. So if I go through the housing menu, and I'll put on, HUD multifamily properties just to show an example of some point data. So you'll see, obviously, these are going to be point locations. So you'll see the little orange diamonds, which represent the actual locations of some HUD multifamily properties. If you hover over one, you can see just sort of like a project name. And then if you click on one, you can see more attributes in these sort of collapsible menus. You wanted to see like additional information, total subsidized units, number of residents, and these will all, like the attributes on the points are all going to vary depending on what point data you're looking at. So obviously schools will have different attributes than multifamily properties. So you can kind of expand through them, and then you can also change some of the visualizations in terms of your point data display too over here in the legend by putting on, changing your icon size or color or shape, and you can kind of just like do that different customization. You can also turn on labels for your points if you wanted to, if you're in like kind of a closer in zoom and wanted to be able to actually like display a label for each point location. You can do that using the little label icon here. You can also hide the data temporarily using that eyeball icon to just kind of hide it from the view. So, oh, I think I missed the filters too. You can also filter data points in PolicyMap. So if you click on this filters button from the point legend, we have different filters, again, depending on the different attributes of the point data. So if you wanted to look at, just those unit or just those, HUD multifamilies with, maybe you were interested in smaller ones. So just like with 1 to 20 units, you can check that box and see like where some of the smaller ones are located. In a lot of cases, you can also keep all the points on the map, but color code based off of a filter selection so that, that the legend will represent sort of the different sizes in terms of number of subsidized units for each of those multifamily properties. So if you wanted to like remove a data layer, data point, you can click on the X's in the legends just to kind of like clear your map. You can also use this reset map button in the bottom right hand corner to actually just kind of like refresh, go back out to that default view. We do also have, in addition to sort of like all of the data layers, data points, we also do have some boundary data in the tool available under this boundaries menu to the left of demographics. So, we have things like just, and these are going to be actual kind of like boundary overlays on top of the data that you're looking at. So, if you wanted to actually just sort of see the census tract boundaries, you can load something like that. You can turn off the labels from the legend. You can do some customization in terms of, the line style, line color, and weight, and things like that too. And then one of which Emma alluded to, we did add, we have some of these kind of more like local area boundaries that we've just sort of loaded by request in the tool and have available sort of through some permissions through the boundaries menu. So for the community preservation corporation users, there is New York City Council District boundaries in here. So you'll see over here, like if you open up your boundaries menu, you wouldn't see all this stuff, but you would see over in this under the provincial boundaries, New York City Council districts, so that you can also show like council district boundaries relative to data available in PolicyMap or data that you might upload or those kinds of things. So let me go back to just sort of selecting. I'm going to hide these boundaries for a second. So, and we'll put on the HUD multifamily properties again. So there were a couple of other kind of buttons from us when you select a location or when you put a location in that we didn't sort of touch on at the beginning because it's really something just to show once you actually have data on the map. So if I, search for Kings County again, and now I actually have data on the map. And from this kind of selected location info bubble or pop-up bubble, there's these different buttons where that allow you to do a couple of different things. So one is you can use that selected location to actually like clip your map boundary. So you would just basically see just the data layer, data point displayed within your selected location. That would be this clip icon, little scissors. So if you click on this, then what you would see is that everything is kind of hidden outside of Kings County. You can toggle that going back to this button or also using the little scissors icon down here in the bottom right. Then there's also this table or kind of view data button. So if you click on this one when you have a location selected, then over here on this sidebar, you can select this drop down to actually see, if I select like the data layer, percent families in poverty, then what it's actually going to be showing me is for just like those census tracts that are located within Kings County, New York, what like the percent of families living in poverty is for each of those census tracts. Some of these -9s are insufficient data values, but the what you would see, so you would see like the different census tracts and the kind of the poverty rates for each of those census tracts that fall within that selected location. And then you can similarly toggle to look at the data points. If you wanted to like see a list of HUD multifamily properties that fall within that selected location, you can toggle over to actually see the list or the table of points that fall within Kings County, New York. And so this will just be those properties themselves. You can go through this list. It'll show you kind of over on the map where they're located, just sort of through that hover. You can also open this up, expand this as a full table, which allows you to just kind of like scan through the attributes for those properties, just to kind of show you more of that detail. And then the other functionality that you can access either by clicking on this download button or from this sidebar once it's actually opened up here is the ability to actually just download this data out. So if you wanted to have poverty rates by census tract within Kings County, New York, then you could use this download, and in this case, you would just be downloading that data layer, percent of families that live in poverty between 2015 and 2019. And once you click on the download data, this would just generate through your browser, just kind of comes up as a CSV. And what you would see is essentially kind of like census tract IDs with the poverty rates for each of them. You could also, change from this shaded by selection if you wanted block group level data or zip code area data. You can change that selection here. You could also download the point data, or this third option is downloading your points with the layer data attached to it. So that would be like, I want the poverty rates for each of the for each census tract where one of these multifamily properties is located. So then you would get basically kind of like the list of multifamily properties and then the census tract for each one based on this or where it's situated and then the poverty rate. So that can be helpful, like if you're looking at like our loans and I want to know which ones are in low and moderate income census tracts or something like that. You would kind of upload your loan data and then download it with a layer actually kind of attached to it based off of like where it's situated. So that's that third option.
Can you go over how to clip boundaries again?
Yeah, so when you have a selected location like we had with Kings County, it's just going to be from this little clip boundary.
Okay.
And once you click on that little scissor icon, it will kind of hide everything outside of it. So
and can you do that with any boundary that you set, like legislative boundaries?
So you can do it with like any boundary that is available, through this set location bar, or that you can or like it based off of like where you're clicking on the map, because you could also just if you were you'll see that similar clip button, when you like click on a census tract. Like this is a little bit of a funny, weird visual, but you can clip based off of like a boundary you select on the map too. But any boundary that you can really kind of search for through this set location. So it could be like a zip code, it could be um, a county, the city of New York, different, but yeah, any of these boundaries that are sort of like built into PolicyMap, you can do that with. We do have like congressional districts in here, so you could do that same thing with congressional districts. We also have like state legislative districts too.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And then as far as just kind of like exporting an actual visual. So we talked about like exporting the data or downloading the data. If you wanted to export an image of a map that you created, then you would use this, you have your data layer, your data point displayed. You would use this print icon over here on the right-hand side. And that will open up this print modal where you can drag this around to kind of center your map, zoom in and out. And then there's the different options over here where you can give it a unique file name, different, layout, either export a PDF or a PNG image, turn on and off different legends. You can also like edit this title up here. And then just save it by clicking on that check mark. So you have those different options that you can do, and then you just export this. And this is similar to the data download. It just sort of pops up through your browser and is in your kind of like local file downloads after a few minutes.
So the next thing I would show is probably working with custom regions in the tool. And so from this top right, in the top right corner, you see this custom regions button. So the custom regions allow you to actually kind of like create your own boundary, more or less, or your own sort of unique region or area. And then similar to how you can use some of the built-in boundaries, like clipping your map and downloading data, you can do that once you actually have created your custom region. So if you click on this custom regions button, there's sort of three different options for how you can create it. You can actually draw on the map like by connecting dots or just kind of like sketching an area. You can assemble like some underlying boundaries, like assemble a couple of zip codes or census tracts, or you can do a radius kind of around like an actual point that on the map that you might click or an address that you might put in. So I can just use maybe the radius as an example here, but if you click on the radius option, and then let's say like this is one of our projects and we want to kind of like create maps or access data based off of a radius around that project. So I would click on the map, and then over here in the create radius region button, you can change this, from the default like a half a mile to maybe a mile since we're in New York. And it'll kind of show you, a preview of what that radius area looks like. Once you click on continue, you can give this a name and say like radius around example project. You can change the visual on this to be, whatever you want, transparency. And then you can save it. Once you've saved your custom region, you'll see it appear in your custom regions menu when you go back to it. So if I go back to my custom regions using that button in the top right hand corner, so there's the create, and then if you toggle to the second tab, that's going to show you the actual list of regions that you've already created. So this is like that radius that I just created. You can, sort these, and then you can always come back to a region afterwards, from this menu, load it on the map. You can click on the pencil icon to go back and edit it after the fact. And in terms of the edits, if I expand that from here, I can also get to that from here. You can change like the visual of it, the name of it. You can also edit the actual shape itself. So if you wanted to like change this to a mile and a half radius or something like that, you can do that, and it will change the actual, area based off of that, those edits. You can also share these custom regions with colleagues. So from that expanded sort of custom region menu, you'll see there's a share. So here you can put in just the email address for who you want to share this with. They would just kind of get a notification, and then they would also similarly see that region show up in their list of custom regions. So basically, once you have this custom region on the map, you can, like I said, use it similar to how you used like Kings County, New York. You can clip your map to just show, basically show, like in this case, block group areas that fall within that radius area. You could also, look at the data that for like the, the block group level or census tract level data or point level data that falls within. So if I wanted to just see like those HUD multifamily properties that fall within that radius area, here's like those 17 properties that fall within that radius. You could also, again, see like the data layer too, like the block groups with poverty rates or census tracts with poverty rates that fall within that custom region. And then you can use this to download the data too. There's also a couple of just sort of very standard system reports. Like most useful one is just this community profile. Basically just like gives you a pretty lengthy kind of report, but it just has lots of like demographic characteristics on population change, different household types, income brackets. So if you're sort of looking to get like just like a lot of data quickly in like a report kind of PDF format, for a custom region, which can be helpful if you're just sort of trying to get like a general understanding of an area. Just kind of like creating a region, generating a community profile report can be just a quick way of doing that. And then so we're at 12:50. I can stop here, see if anybody has any questions. There's the two kind of other things that we sort of time dependent like to try and get to is the self-service data loader, which allows you to kind of take like address level data in a spreadsheet and upload it to display it as points on the map. And then we do have a multi-layer map feature, which just kind of lets you put a couple of layers on the map and set some criteria to kind of like zero in on places that meet that criteria, kind of to show areas of intersection. So, but since we're, kind of getting close to the end of the hour, wanted to see if anybody had any questions about what we've talked about so far. Okay. Just double checking Teams. Okay. Well, I can show, with the time we have left, I can show a couple more of these things. I don't know if anybody
quick
has like
design question.
Sure.
Are the colors customizable, or is it just what you have uploaded?
So the colors are customizable on like the points, the data layer. It is limited though to like basically just the options that you see like from these drop downs. So like,
Okay.
we just have like a general purple ramp, a maroon ramp, an orange ramp. There's more within like I think there's not as many, but I think the most color ramps or the most color selections are within the custom region. If you could kind of edit this, there's lots of color options here, but yeah, so it is limited to what you see in these drop downs, but you can obviously, you can change the colors using those selections.
And how often is the data you updated, like at the top?
So the data in PolicyMap is updated. So it all just depends on the source. Some of the data sources, like unemployment, is like a monthly update because the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases their data monthly. Some of it is more annual. Pretty much everything gets at least an annual update, but like stuff from the census, census only really releases data, once a year, that we use in terms of the American Community Survey data. So that's just really more of like an annual update, but yeah, that's kind of the general gist of it. So it's at least once a year. Some of them are more frequently if they're released from the source, kind of like on a quarterly or monthly basis.
Okay, cool, thanks.
So I don't know if anybody has like a preference with these last few minutes. Like I can probably squeeze in either going through the self-service data loader or going through a multi-layer mapping kind of example. So I don't know if anybody had like a burning desire to see either of those, but if not, I'm happy to just select one of them.
I think the data uploader would be most helpful for me.
I agree.
Okay. So the data uploader is going to be one of the kind of last functions that's just in the legacy tool. You can, once you've uploaded the data, you can see it on the map from the new platform, but in terms of actually doing the upload, you have to use the data loader through the legacy platform. So I'm just going to do that toggle that I talked about at the top, and then I'll click on this data loader tab here. So in terms of uploading your own address level data, I'll just open up a sample really simple kind of data set. So here's just like an example data set that we'll do for this training. So it's the fields that you have to have included are street address, city, state, zip code, and that's basically kind of like the key fields that you need to have in order for this geocoder within the data loader to be able to actually like place those addresses as points on the map. Alternatively, if you actually have like latitude, longitude coordinates, you could also just upload with those. But you can have other fields to your data. You could have, I think it's up to 50 fields in your data set. I have like one additional sample field here. You can have up to 5,000 addresses within like a given upload. So you can do as many, that's kind of per batch. You could do as many batches as you want, but the limitation is really kind of on like a individual upload basis, that it has to be a file with less than 5,000 records. So that's sort of some of the parameters. So when you have your data ready to upload, you can create it in Excel. You would have to save it as a CSV file from Excel. That's just sort of the file type that the data loader works with. So that's what the data looks like. So then over here in PolicyMap on the data loader, here you would go in, you would say, there is this legacy option to add points directly on the map, but for the most part, people are using, upload a spreadsheet of points, give this a name. So these are just some projects in New York. So I'll just say project locations, and you can make it accessible to yourself or to select individuals through email addresses. There is a publicly shareable option that's really just if you wanted to. It doesn't show up anywhere for public users or whatever. It's more so for if you wanted to include it like in an embeddable map, that you would use that option. But I'll just use myself for now, and you can change like your shape, size, color. Here's where you would go find that sample data loader data set. There are these links just have like tips for setting up your data, a sample spreadsheet if you wanted to kind of work from that. So the next step, once you click on import, is that this is going to basically kind of look at your data and look at the file and try and identify those columns or those fields that I indicated are kind of like the critical ones, your street address, your city, state, and zip. As long as they're basically kind of labeled and have column names that are close to that, the geocoder will be able to kind of pick up on them. And then here's just sort of like any extra additional remaining columns within your data. Once you click on next, it's going to actually, basically run those addresses through a machine geocoder to try and match them to actual locations or point locations on the map. So this next screen is a summary of the results of that geocoding. So it tells you, 565 of the 572 points within my data set were successfully geocoded. You can sort these columns. So the green dot means that it was geocoded. If I sort this, I'll see here some red dots. That means that it wasn't geocoded. So there was something about the address that it didn't like and wasn't able to actually place a point. You can do edits in here on the fly. So if you needed to, maybe remove like this fourth floor kind of like suite information from the address. Now that I've removed that, now it's like found the match, and that's like a green dot. So you can do those edits kind of right here within this window. And once you've done any of that and you just want to kind of import the data, then you can click on save and close. And this will, save the data set. This just shows you kind of a quick preview of the data on the map. But to actually kind of interact with this data, I'm going to actually toggle back to the new version of the tool, and any of these data sets that you upload through that data loader are going to be available in this My Data tab. So that far left-hand menu item, when you click on that, here's where I'll see those New York City project locations that I just uploaded. So now I'm seeing those points on the map, and there's not much in terms of like attributes for these because I didn't have much actual data within them besides the address information. But if you needed to, go back and edit anything about these points, you can go back to that data loader screen, access that data set. You can then add permissions for other people to be able to see it. They would similarly see it under their My Data menu when you share it with them. And then once you have these data points on the map, you can, pretty much, you don't have the filters, but you can pretty much, you can change the visuals. You can, see which ones fall within, like a custom region. So I can kind of reload that radius area, custom region, and see, a quick, if I click on that, view data, I can see basically the points that fall within that radius area that I'm interested in. So maybe these are like potential property locations or something like that, and you wanted to see which ones are within a radius of another existing project. So you can interact with it pretty much the same as you do with other PolicyMap data. Download it for selected locations and things like that. But that's just kind of how to get it into the tool, and then accessing it. So I think we're already a couple minutes over. Any questions about the data loader or anything else before folks have to drop off? Don't see anything in the chat either.
So you're going to circulate this video via email after the session ends?
Yeah. So what we usually with these just kind of post them up on our YouTube channel unlisted. So nobody can find them unless you have the link, and we'll just share a link so that it's kind of easy to get to. All right. If nobody else has any other questions, thanks for the time, and I hope this was a helpful session. Everybody have a good rest of their afternoon.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
All right.